Prepare to hear the truth from a real whistleblower and American patriot. Here's civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and indefinitely suspended FBI agent, Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a wonderful guest who is a friend of mine and also a highly educated, or at least spent a lot of time being educated. I guess we'll find out in a second what he knows. Right. How many FBI agents are you friends with?
So I've got a couple of friends at the FBI. The ones that are at the FBI currently are dwindling rapidly. I mean, you wouldn't know anything about that, I'm sure, but
no. Does that happen? Yeah. Do they get rid of people that love guns?
Never. No, they don't.
You know, I actually had an agent tell me he could open up a case on me because of the number of guns that he believed that I own. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't. I mean, you're Catholic too, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So no, it doesn't. And the domestic violence extremist stuff that they put out. I mean, you like guns. You do have a flag, which I think is a symbol of terrorism. What are the something bad?
Militias. Yeah. Militia extremists.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I found out about Stephen really, really early on is that I kind of told him about my situation. I reached out to him because I was having concerns that the FBI was going to toss me out over COVID stuff. And I said, I don't know what my options are. And so I described my situation to him, and he goes, well, it sounds like you're a domestic terrorist. You probably homeschool your kids too. And I was like, oh, like, who is this guy?
So, I lived most of my life in Mississippi. I'm originally from Texas. My wife hates when I say that, but that's where I was born. I still claim it. It still says it on my passport. So I lived for about 32-ish years in Mississippi, went to law school at Mississippi College, a low tier law school. If it's even ranked, it probably isn't, but I still graduated, got my degree, passed the bar the first time, and just started kind of forcing my way into Mississippi gun issues. Mississippi's a gun loving state. We have very good gun laws. I mean, contrast it with New York or Hawaii or California. We don't discriminate on who can have guns.
Help people understand what that process looks like. I know you've worked on it you've actually fought some of these processes and used this. So kind of give people the expert understanding of what this looks like. I know a lot of people probably are hearing this and going, can I buy a suppressor? Right. The answer is probably yes. Yep. And the fear is, how do I jump into the deep end of doing that? So maybe you could take some of the mystery out of it.
Yeah. So there's two main forms. There's the form 1, which is you making it yourself. And there's the form 4, which you would get when you went to a dealer to buy it, like what we call a class 3 dealer. Class 3 just tells you the type of FFL that the FFL people have. So certain dealers can deal only in regular firearms. Certain dealers can also deal in NFA firearms. Certain manufacturers can make regular firearms. Other manufacturers can make special fun firearms, suppressors, which are still classified as firearms under federal law. But
despite the fact that it's just a tube that couldn't fire anything.
Yeah. But look, I used it against them in Illinois, which something I'll talk about in a little bit. So you've got the two forms. You've got the form 1, which is the making. So if you wanted to make a suppressor yourself, you file your form 1, you give the ATF your photograph, your fingerprints, what else? $200 tax stamp, and you send in all your paperwork to the ATF. And then you wait. They say 90 days. It's not 90 days. It's up to a year. And then the ATF slaps a little tax stamp on it and gives you your paperwork and says, great, you can make your suppressor now, or your short barrel rifle, or your short barrel shotgun. A form 4, I would go to a dealer, let's say silencer shop, whatever, and order my suppressor, and then do my form 4, which is just the transfer. I'm not making it, form 1. I'm transferring it, form 4. It's the same process. Photographs, fingerprints, pay your $200 tax, and then wait a whole bunch of time to us. I was on the beach. I was fishing in Gulf Shores, Alabama with my father-in-law. And he calls and he's like, hey, dude, I just got this paperwork. What am I supposed to do with it? I'm like, whatever that guy's name is. The ATF agent. I'm like, just have him call me. Here's my cell phone number. Just have him call me. So I'm fishing, reeling it in. I think I was smoking back then too, but reeling it in, and I'm like, hey, and he's like, hey, you represent so-and-so? I'm like, yeah, I represent him. He's like, well, I understand he's made a machine gun. I'm like, I don't know if he's made anything or not, but what do you want? And he's like, oh, we need him to surrender it. I'm like, okay, well, I'll see what's going on and then I'll call you back. He's like, no, this needs to happen RFN. I'm like, I'm fishing, bro. I'm like, in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm fishing. Can we just deal with this some other time? Anyways, so we eventually get the firearm surrendered under protest, and just sued him. Within if it was that day that he surrendered it back to them, or a couple of days later, we sued him. And the court case was just funny. All of that was just funny to me, that they actually approved it, and they said, oh, and we made a mistake. And I don't know how much you know about the ATF, but they're infallible. They never make mistakes.
Right.
They never change their mind on anything.
Right.
Everything they do is totally legit.
Clearly.
Yeah.
That's why they went to Waco.
Yeah. No,
that was a totally legit, terrible search warrant that didn't make any sense to anybody.
Yeah. Over machine guns. Right.
Right. Which, do you know the justification for the machine guns? I'm sure you've read the warrant, but in the probable cause statement for the Waco search warrant, they used as their proof that there were probable cause to believe they were machine guns because a farmer down the way heard shooting, and he knew from his time in the Army that that's what a machine gun was. Yeah. And the problem is that anybody who's ever been around a shooting range and heard 15 people shooting AR-15s at targets when they face or turn or on a timer or anything else, it sounds like a burst of gunfire that could only come from 15 guns or one gun firing very, very fast. And there's no way that you could decide that it was a machine gun. And I don't think anybody in the Army who served in Korea or whatever it was a reputable source. But that's what they quoted to the judge. The judge signed it.
It's crazy. Well, I mean,
anyway, they never make mistakes, but they did retract this one.
Yeah, obviously I'm being very facetious because so I think that now we would have a different, or at least a better shot at it. But I'm very busy with other things. So
no. I imagine that. So, and then you could have appealed it further, but it turns out that our mutual friend decided to join the FBI.
Yeah. So, Supreme Court appeals are very, very expensive. And at that time, it was just not something that, I had the funds to do, and it probably wouldn't have been the best case to bring at the time of that the court, the makeup of the court was not awesome. Now it's a lot better. So, we just kind of let it die, and it's probably the right decision. It pains me, I really believe that machine guns are protected by the Second Amendment. The reason that they wanted serial numbers on it was to trace them during the sale of it, so they could keep inventory of it, so they could track the sales. Right.
It wasn't for the government to keep track of them.
Well, the justification for it now is we need to see when these guns are used in crimes. So it's
right, but that sort of assumes something, doesn't it?
Well, it assumes that all guns will be used in crimes. There's all these reports and spreadsheets that some idiot bureaucrat up there is probably compiling nonstop.
That was Stephen pantomiming breathless typing,
right?
For people on the audio. Some people will just be hearing this. So what's funny is that they say there's 400 million guns in circulation in the United States, and then you talk about the number that were used in crimes, and I'm sure it's an infinitesimally small fraction.
Yeah, it's a lot lower than 400 million. I read a tweet from Biden today. I cannot stand when he shows up in my Twitter feed. But he was like, there's 70,000 fentanyl deaths per year, and I'm like, well, yeah, because your border, people are just nonstop walking over it. But, contrast that with the number of gun deaths. And there's 35,000 gun deaths per year, including suicide, which is, I think,
2/3.
Right. So it's a massive number of the gun deaths or suicide deaths. Fentanyl's no big deal. Keep coming over our border, keep coming here. And then guns, it's we got to ban assault weapons. It's well, fentanyl is banned.
How's that working out for you, right?
It doesn't work. And we know that it doesn't work because we tried prohibition.
Yes. Well, if you saw the thing that I probably didn't make any friends with on the background of my computer at the FBI, my unclassified computer system had one of those demotivators.
Yeah.
And it said, the government, if you think we have problems, you should wait and see our solutions.
One of the top killers of people in our country is heart disease. And we know what you can do to prevent a lot of the heart disease. Don't drink, don't smoke, and exercise. Maybe the government should make everybody run, I don't know, a 5K every morning. You have to do it, and you have to attest that you've done it, or it's a 1001 violation, right?
That's right. So here's the funny thing about it. I actually worked in a job where fitness was a requirement, and we had to test for it every single year. And then they still had the stupidity of the vaccine stuff. Mm-hmm. So
but that would
work out really well.
reduce people dying of heart attacks.
It would, but Phil, did you ever know anybody that was an FBI agent that was fat?
A lot of them, almost most of them.
Did a fair number of them just skip out on the fit test, or what was going on there, you think?
Yeah. In fact, there were stories of old timers doing it in a suit while smoking a cigar because it was voluntary, but they were voluntold. Yeah. They had to do it, but they just didn't have to pass.
So, Stephen, government regulations work really well, as you can attest to.
Yep.
And you ended up walking away from this case, but it did lead to us meeting.
I mean, I obviously keep in touch with my guys from that case, and I have become known as the machine gun lawyer.
You've been watching The Kyle Seraphin Show. Please join us on our Rumble channel if you want to see the uninterrupted, unedited, and uncut complete video. That's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. If you'd like to hear the audio, you can find these every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. Check us out. The Kyle Seraphin Show. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show. Be sure to follow him on Twitter and Truth @Kyle Seraphin.